Wow, it is. I always love spending time with Dave Allen, and it's kind of a rare thing. We haven't seen Dave a whole lot. Few things have been going on in his life, but for those of you that have not met Dave or don't know him, he was one of the founders of GCA. Dave was also one of the first. He and Harry Faddis were the two people. I'd never heard of a coach before until it's in a Body Electric workshop here in Dallas, and they talked about, well, being a life coach, and just something about that was really intriguing. Dave was my first coach, and this was back in the 1990s. So he and Harry were pioneers in this, and not only was the coaching so good and really powerful, it also showed me I want to do that. And so, I've told Dave this countless times, but the impact that he's made on me and so many of us who worked with him. So I'm really glad to welcome him back to today's call, and kind of a homecoming, and to hear what he's been working on. And so he's someone I really appreciate, not only as a colleague and my coach, but also as a friend and a mentor. And so I just, welcome back, Dave. And so what are you bringing today?
Well, thank you, Tim, for your generosity. And I think the first thing I'm aware of, listening to you just now, is, one of the things as coaches is, we often don't get to see how things ripple out. Right. We only see the first or maybe the second ripple. And one of the beautiful things of being connected as long as we have is I've been able to see how some of the ripples, have gone out, and what you've been able to accomplish, and the places that you've lent your voice and been an influencer. So that's a huge gift, and I really appreciate that. In getting ready for today, I think one of the things that came to mind is the ritual that you've led many times at the opening of the GCA. The image of gathering around a fire as we all come back together. And I think historically, one of the roles of men has been to go out and either hunt or battle or do whatever. And women stayed and took care of families, raised children, did the day-to-day life of the community. But the men would go out and then come back, and frequently they had news, they had things to bring for sustenance to the community. And it feels like I'm coming back to the Gay Coaches Fire, and that feels really, really good. It's also great to look on the Zoom screen and see so many new faces here, some familiar faces that's really sweet to see again, and so many new faces, and appreciate the work of those of you who are bringing enthusiastic new voices to the Gay Coaches Alliance. So I'm really happy to be here for that.
Yeah. Well, you've been away from the GCA for a while. So what have you been up to? Anything?
Just a little bit. I think, last time I talked to Tom Keidel, I think he was one of the last folks at GCA I talked to, and I told him a little bit about why I was going to be stepping back. And there was a lot going on in my life. I had a new relationship starting at that time, and that's been a journey in and of itself. We moved Carlos cross country in July of 2019, and then the next thing we know, early March, the 8th of March here in San Francisco, it was locked down, and we were in a 600 square foot apartment, just the two of us, barely 6 months together. And so there's a huge amount of learning that we did, and both of us trying to work from home and do all of that. So lots of growing and building relationships been going on. My family of choice also disintegrated, unfortunately. And that was going on. And so that's been its own thing as well. Lots of learning there, how to be with people as their lives change, including the two kids in the family. And then also, having been a body electric facilitator for 20 plus years, I did my last workshop with JoJo in Oakland in late February of 2020. And I haven't been able to do any of that work since. So where does that energy go? Where does all of that wisdom go? And so, as this whole thing started, I started looking at, what is the work that I do, and how can I take what I've been learning and experienced in all of these things and take it to a new place, and really do something that comes out of my heart.
So what is the answer?
So what is the answer?
Yes.
Well, the first answer has to do with identity. And over the years, I've poked at identity in a lot of the different pieces of work that I've done. And it always engaged probably about 50 or 60%. That there was never the full engagement or takeoff. But I could sense that there was potency there, but it wasn't exactly the right place. And it's actually just been in the last few days that I finally realized that, the work that I do around desire is part about getting what you want, but the bigger piece, particularly for gay men, which is really the clients that I work with, it's about knowing who you want to be and following your desire to be who you want to be. Because I believe that once gay men can tap into that, there's some really remarkable and amazing things they have to bring to the world. That so many gay men that I've worked with and that I know, present company excluded actually, have lived in a world where they lived lives based on the expectations of others, lived lives so that they wouldn't be all that visible in who they really were. And so identity along with desire got stuffed behind doors that were marked, verboten, taboo, bad, nasty, ugly, sinful, and all of that. And it's really that identity that allows us to bring to the world the gifts that we really have in full force. And once we can connect with who we truly want to be and have the freedom to create from that place, something really different begins to happen. So I've been really organizing my work around that principle.
Well, it sounds like this has been a theme for you. I mean, I've had the privilege of kind of watching you unfold also, and the ripples that you have made, and the GCA. I mean, that there are hints of that. I think was one of the calls to action or the reasons for doing this organization was to get coaching to gay men, to help them be bigger in the world, but also get more gay men to be coaches.
Exactly, yeah, because there are gifts. There was a blanking on his name right now, but a guy who worked at the center in New York for a number of years that wrote a great book about the unique gifts that gay men bring to the world and things that we don't tap into. That we have a capacity for caring, a capacity for empathy and compassion. And if there's anything lacking in the world right now, there's a huge compassion deficit. If we could just understand where other people are
Oh,
coming from. You know, it's, you know, my, you know, so many people are upset with Joe Manchin. And I was talking to my brother, who is not a Republican or a conservative by any stretch of the imagination, but has worked in the mining industry. And he said, the one thing Joe was working towards is trying to protect over 500 communities in West Virginia that coal funds the educational system. It keeps those cities alive and vibrant. And every one of those cities that has lost coal production, opioid addiction has gone through the roof. Kids have moved away. There's no stores left. And it's a whole way of life that disappears. And, you know, it's timely that we talked about television programs, because I think there's an underlying theme in so much of what I've been watching lately that goes to, so who do we have to sacrifice to make the world that we want to live in? And the only way that we can make that decision where it's not sacrificing somebody is really understanding what it's like to live in their world. And then we create a solution together. So it's going back to that compassion. And I think that's one of the things we bring to the world in a much different way, a different way than women do. And doing it as men, I think, is so much more powerful than a lot of things that men can do if we can lead from a place of compassion.
well, in your notes, you made mention of no brain. What? Say more about that. No brainer.
That's one of the things you know, Jeff Nally may particularly love this, because I know he's the king of neuroscience here at the GCA, along with a couple of others. But I was doing some research on what happens when we're told no again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And I came across some work by a guy named Dan Siegel at UCLA. And he does a lot of parenting work. I don't know if he does other stuff, but it's his parenting work that drew me. And he talks about how parents can create an actual no brain in their kids rather than a yes brain. And so essentially what it is if children hear no often enough, when someone asks them a question or asks them what they want, then they go blank. And, you know, I don't know if that sounds like any gay men that you've been working with, but that whole needless, wantless thing. What do you want? Well, I don't know. It's like, what do you want? And, you know, it's much deeper than the, you know, where do you want to go to dinner? Well, I don't know. Where do you want to go? Because, you know, it's a freeze. And in a no-brain state, you know, you actually freeze. You are afraid to answer. And I think the reason it persists with gay men in particular is because not only were they told no, but so you wanted a doll for Christmas. Well, I'll be goddamned if my kid will ever have a fucking doll for Christmas. There ain't no dolls coming into my boy's house. Well, so, you know, first off, you aren't going to be a member of the family if you want a doll, right? You've been told in no uncertain terms. And, you know, you just take all of the no's that, you know, gay men as kids may have experienced. And, you know, is it any wonder, you know, they get to be adults and, you know, you ask them what they want. It's like, this is dangerous territory because the same thing happened all through, you know, their adolescence and their growing up. It was, you know, anytime they gave voice to their desire, it got to a point where it just wasn't condemned. It felt, you know, it felt deadly. It felt really, really scary. You know, not only could you lose your relationships, but you might actually lose your life or suffer physical violence. So I think no brain is a situation or a condition that a lot of gay men that persists with them. I think kids grow out of it frequently, and I think that's what Siegel says is the, you know, they do grow out of it eventually. But I think with the intensity that no comes, along with the messages around such basic things as relationship and your very existence, then it's a much more potent mix than if it was just, no, you can't have a new pair of skis. So
Um, so it sounds like as kids, maybe having that no thing going, no brain, maybe kept us safe, kept us alive. It was
it did.
like a survival strategy, but well, we grew up. Perhaps that got left behind, kind of like the saboteurs that we talk about in coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I relate to that now I understand more about that. And I thought it was being an Enneagram 9 and it's getting flooded in everybody else's stuff, but whatever the cause of it, it's a living hell when you
Yeah.
truly do not know what you want. And you getting mad and yelling at me about, well, why don't you know? It doesn't help. Not you, Dave. You don't do
No,
that.
no,
But
I know. Exactly. Yeah. I
but it's
completely understand it.
exasperating to be around someone who, but they truly don't. So,
Yeah.
pretty provocative stuff. And so, why would I want or desire something that I don't deserve?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's, the other thing that's come out of this whole exploration, retooling, looking at, the work that I do,
Mm-hmm.
is, how do you connect to desire? And, part of it for me has always been that I think using experiments around sex and sexuality are a really good way for men to explore desire, because there's a very quick feedback loop. It's much quicker to say, I'd really like you to, massage my shoulders, or I'd like you to play with my balls, or I'd like you to spank me, or I'd like you to tie me up. And either that happens or there's a negotiation and something happens out of that. So it's a very quick turnaround. Added to that is there's also the element of pleasure, and that amplifies the lessons that are there to be learned. I'm a big proponent that pleasure is not only a great teacher, but also an enormous healer. That pleasure has power to heal us in ways that other things don't. Pleasure also has the ability to get us radically present. I know I've been with men countless times over the last 20 plus years where they're in a state of bliss and pleasure, and all of a sudden, all that crap from a whole lifetime just kind of dissolves away temporarily.
Mm.
And for the first time, for some of them, they can imagine a life different than that life based on the past. And so I think pleasure and experiments around sex and sexuality are very, very useful and potent in exploring desire. Because even though you can work with somebody, or you can work with a coach, or you can get some support around asking for a raise, or doing something else in your life, the turnaround loops on those, or feedback loops on those, are much longer. And so this is a much quicker way to ask for something, have your need met or negotiated, and then feel what it's like to have that happen. And that's enormously reparative. The other thing that has come out of that is essentially, I think there are 5 components that go into us getting what we want. And so if you can imagine a triangle, and on the 3 sides of the triangle, there's desire, deserve, and declare. And so obviously it has to start with desire. You have to connect with something in you that you want. And so frequently, what we initially want may not be what it is we always want. I know that there's been an enormous amount of research done about emotional eating, It isn't that somebody wants, that whole pint of ice cream or that whole, package of Oreos. There's something else that they want, but they don't know how to get that. So Oreos temporarily fill that void. And so it's not only asking, what do I want, but it's asking, what do I want and what do I have when I have that? And what is it that I really want? And going a little bit deeper with that. So that's the first piece, is the desire side. The next thing that I think gets in the way for, particularly gay men, is that so many gay men, I don't think, believe that they deserve to have what it is that they actually desire. And if you don't deserve it, once you start working towards something, all sorts of roadblocks are going to start showing up. You're going to sabotage yourself. You're going to find criticism. You're going to find barriers. You're going to procrastinate. There are all kinds of ways that you're going to slow your progress if you don't feel like you deserve something. Because how can I be working towards something, actively engaging with that, and I don't deserve to have it at the end of the day? So this is either all for naught, or I've got to answer that cognitive dissonance that I don't deserve this and I want this. And more often than not, the dissonance on the side of I don't deserve this wins. So it's about not just understanding what it is you desire, but what it is that you are willing to give yourself permission to deserve. And more often than not, that's a two-step process. And I think this is where coaches can be really effective, is we can temporarily give permission to deserve something. And until we can build with a client that belief that, I actually do deserve this. But temporarily, we can give them permission to want that and to start moving forward in that process. The third piece of it is declare. And it's about making a declaration. It's about putting a stake in the ground. It's also frequently about asking for something, because it's really easy to say, okay, I desire this, I deserve this. And as long as I sit in my little office here in San Francisco and don't make some form of declaration either to myself or to the world or to someone I want to engage with, nothing's going to happen. I so appreciate, Adam reaching out the other day and, making a declaration. So we started this presentation for the GCA 2 years ago. What do you want to do with that? And it felt really great to put the stake back in the ground with him and say, yeah, let's go for it. And so, it's that declaration is about engagement. It's about bringing it out in the world so not only you can see it, but possibly others can see it. It's also the way that we get help. You can't get help if you don't make some form of declaration. So those are the three components in the triangle. Around that triangle, there are two circles are actually the way, that I have a diagram made of this is, it's one side of a band is listening, and the inside of the band is actually about surrendering. And the listening piece, I think, is particularly something that doesn't often get spoken about, because when we're going internal and trying to connect with our desire, and what is it underneath that, it's often, a coach or somebody, a friend that can help us illuminate a little bit. But I also believe there's an element that, we connect with guides or spirit or source or whatever that can really tie us into our essence. And when the essence that you're trying to tie into that part of your desire is about your identity and who you want to be in the world and what you have to bring from the world, I think you have to invite a bigger audience to help you access that. And it's not necessarily an audience of friends and people who see you as you are. But Harry used to tell this great story about us not seeing ourselves for who we really are. And he talked about having a dream one night, and he had died and gone to heaven, and there he was in the judgment. And the judgment sort of looked like an amphitheater with him right down in the center, nothing around him but just bright light, and all of these people out there, everybody he'd known in his life. And so, question was asked, so what did you do with your life? What did you bring to the world? And well, I grew up in a difficult family, kind of wringing his hands, hanging his head. That was really difficult. And education was hard. And as he was saying those things and adopting this hangdog posture, people started snickering. And so I thought, well, I've got to come up with more reasons why I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And so, well, I have this type of problem, and then I got into these relationships, and I had this challenge in my life, and I had challenges with substances, and they started laughing, and the more he tried to explain, the louder they laughed. Managed to look up just out of the corner of his eye, and he saw that they were pointing and laughing. It wasn't just that they were laughing, but they were pointing, and they were pointing up behind him. And when he turned around, what he saw was how they really saw him. Not the way he portrayed himself with apology and excuse, but rather this giant, vibrant, strong, impressive stature behind him. And I think that's sometimes why, particularly when we're looking, into questions of who do I want to be in the world, what do we want to bring to the world, we need to get outside of ourselves and get some inspiration. And that comes through listening. And whether that's spirit or source, or, I'm working with a coach, Jeffrey Van Dyke, right now, that, actually asks us to name our work and dialogue with our work as a way of, what does the work want to bring to the world? How does it want to be in the world? And that listening is really, really become a powerful thing for me. And I said on the other side of that is then surrender, because I think when we get to the places of who do I want to be, well, this is who you need to be, Tim. Well, I don't know if I'm not so sure about that. And so surrendering into that can be a really, really positive way to, okay, so I'll just try this on. I'll just try it on. Just surrender for an hour or a day or a week or a month, whatever. It's also around the deserving. So I'll give up my belief that I'm not deserving, and I'll live into a place that actually says that I am deserving. And then surrendering into the declaration as well. It's like, I'll stop believing that I'm going to be shamed or hurt if I ask for this. And I can't put a stake in the ground. I can put this out there in the world, and it's going to be okay. So it's about surrendering at every step of the process. And I think for a lot of us, it's so antithetical to what we've been taught, which is we have a thing which is thrust, and keep pounding into the world until we finally break through. And sometimes it's about just sitting back and opening ourselves up and allowing allowing us to bring to the world who we really are.
Wow. That I had thought of that story, Harry's fable, dream, and that it's just, I get tingles.
Yeah.
We, as especially gay men, as our gay clients, even as enlightened as some places are today, and many improvements, we still spend a lot of energy hiding or trying to hide and thinking we're hiding in plain sight. And it's just, what you're talking about is really a powerful thing.
Yeah. But it is about, learning how to show up, because we have learned to hide. We have learned to be in the background. I remember leaving GTE right after Y2K.
Mm-hmm.
When people typically left, that environment, you went out for lunch and dinner for a period of about 2 weeks, is my experience of, how others were treated and feted. And, I just had a couple of people who, want to go for lunch, no big parties, I got a cake from my department and we had a department thing. But other than that, there wasn't anything, I finally come to realize it wasn't because they didn't like me, but somebody was leaving that they didn't know.
Yeah.
It's like there was no personal or human connection. And it was a completely different world then. It was a world that was very different than it is today, 20 years later, in terms of being able to be out about who you were and your life. And so sharing was, what did you do on the weekend, was frequently devoid of details and a lot of, I had a good weekend, did a couple of things, did a few errands, did some stuff in the yard. There isn't enough emotional content in that for anybody to connect. And I think that's part of the reason why we can hide in plain sight, is we don't connect. There's nothing, we don't put a stake back in the game of connection because it hasn't been safe. And a lot of what the invite men into the possibility that is not their life now. That was your life, and this is your life now, and you can love it, and you can still change. You can ask for something different. You deserve something different.
The declaration part, I don't know, sounds a little like manifesting. Is that right, or how's that different than new agey stuff?
So this isn't the, if I say I want a Lamborghini, I'm going to wake up some morning and there's a bright, shiny Lamborghini out in my driveway. It isn't that type of manifesting, but I think it's a couple of things. One, it's about putting it out into the world so that it can connect with others. And, if nobody knows what you're up to, it's actually impossible for you to get help if nobody knows what you're up to, if you constantly have that under wraps. And what I found is the more open I've been about what it is that I'm up to, the more opportunities, the more help that shows up. I think GCA is possibly a great example of that. It's like there's a monthly call that you can you have occasion to talk about what it is you're up to. And it's like, well, let's do a presentation about that. ICF, this region or global or whatever is coming up, and I'd love to partner with you. I know Gary's invited a number of people to write for Choice, because you always have a choice. And, Jeff Nally and a number of UTEM, a lot of you have partnered with one another, on conferences, on papers, on, workshops. And I think that's one of the strengths. It's just declaration. This is what I'm working on. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is, I think it puts it in the present in a different way. My mom was famous for every spring saying, this is the year I'm finally going to get organized. And it was the year. So, she had until December 31st to get organized. And, then, school started and, summer came and all of that. And, instead of saying, today, this is what I'm going to do to get organized. And so the declaration is about putting something specific and actionable together, which, as coaches, we know is the only way people ever get anything done is you have something specific and actionable. You can't have some vague thing that you're going to do someday.
So the thing about declare reminds me of one of the body electric retreats. And I don't remember which one it was now, where we did rituals. We all designed rituals, not everyone, but if you wanted to. And there was something really powerful about declaring and having witnesses there. They don't have to do anything except listen. But
Right.
there's just something, well, it felt otherworldly, because usually declaring some of the things that we were putting out there would get ridiculed or criticism or shaming. And throwing it out there was just something so healing about putting something out there, a heart's desire about, I want different, and having people there just as witnesses. I think that's important for coaches too, that we are witnesses to our clients.
Absolutely. And I think that's, one of the things that we've lost in the last 20 months or so is so much of our lives have been in isolation or just around a very small handful of people. And so our lives have not been witnessed in the way that we're used to. And, I'm really curious how we move into a world where we're being witnessed on a more regular basis. And have we contracted in a way that doesn't allow us to be as free about being a witness? Because as you just mentioned, the thing was, it's something you really wanted or something you wanted to claim. And, I know so many men who, still remember some of those rituals and still act on those rituals, and still take away from those rituals the thing that they were trying to claim, whether it was a relationship or whether it was a sense of losing something and claiming something different. There are so many pieces that have fallen into place for men. That witnessing piece is one of the things that happens with declaration. Because if you sit in your closet and just think things,
right,
there is no declaration. There's nobody to witness you.
I was told I can ask you something, Dave, because something you said earlier.
Absolutely.
Arnie, I know there's, when you see,
I know it's Arnie.
Who's talking. I know. Hi. First of all, hi. Great to see you again. I'm very touched by when you talked about Harry getting choked up. That was lovely. Anyway, so you were talking about when you're working with deserving and deservability, how there could be those responses of shame that come up. And I kind of lost what you were saying, and it felt like it was really a powerful thing to share. Do you remember? Can you kind of go back there for a moment? Approximately.
Well, from what you're saying is, we've lived, our past lived experience is one where many of our desires were shamed. Whether it was, how we wanted to present ourselves in the world, how we wanted to, relate in the world, whether we wanted to have, sex in a particular way. And a lot of that still continues. But there's shame around that. And so at the core of my work is the belief that all desire is sacred. Because if it's a pure desire of your heart and it isn't going to do harm or damage to another human being, then that is a sacred desire. And so if you start from that place, that which is most sacred, it's a way to begin to transmute some of that, that shame, that embarrassment, that, violence, whatever it was that kept you from feeling like you deserved what it is you wanted. And it also plays into other areas. It's not just about those things. I think there's a lot of us that live lives of scarcity when we're very young. It's like, oh, we can't have that. We can't afford it.
Yes.
Oh, we can't do that. That there isn't money for that. There isn't budget for that. I know all the other kids have, name brand, tennis shoes, but you're going to have the Tom McCann's brand because we can't afford the others. And so there's that other piece of deserving, which is around, I can step into a different place. I don't have to live from a place of constant scarcity. And there's also an element of fear in that. What will happen if I get it? Well, you deserve this. And so live into that. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I think one of the things that happened is we're in a world where people are all about, social media and the image they put out. So it's like, I'm powerful, I'm doing all this, and you can feel intimidated by this expectation of who you're supposed to be. And sometimes I feel like I want a quieter life, and some desire doesn't have to be this, I'm going to change the world. It could be something quieter too. That's the other part of it,
Well, yeah, and I appreciate, what you've been doing on social media lately about, sharing about your cooking adventures. I mean, that's you following your desire and putting it out there to share your joy in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Dave, most of my coaching work is in the corporate or in the business realm. I think there's several of us that are in that. And what you're talking about is powerful, but is it NSFW? How do you make this? How do you bring this into a workplace?
Well, so you can find other quick response feedback loops. So it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be around bondage, or it doesn't have to be touch,
right?
Because we become a world where we can't even think about touching somebody at work, let alone talk about it or actually follow through with it. So it's, where do I find the feedback loop to begin to get some sense of belief that my desires can be heard and responded to. So maybe it's really, it's exercises in the corporate world that, okay, so let's talk about what's your desire for this team today? What would be your desire for this team today? And this has to be something that we can do in this room with the resources that we have at hand. What would be your desire for this team? And what would happen, for you, Tim, if that desire was met? And then, you can start looking, is there an element of lack of deserving there? And then there's, the coaching opportunity there. And then, so Tim, you've got this desire. You obviously feel like you deserve this. So now how can you, what's the declaration you want to make to the team around your desire? Well, I would really like for all of us to go to lunch today rather than us all splintering off into separate groups. There's, the possibility for yes, no, and maybe, and it's a pretty quick feedback. And the same thing is you can invite them to surrender into their fear because there's probably some anxiety about asking the team for something that they probably wouldn't have planned anyway. And there's also a sense of, okay, so just for a minute, don't think about this. So feel into this and see what comes up for you. If you feel into this, what do you know that's different than if you think into this? Because if somebody's asking for something, let's all go to lunch together. There's a feeling component to that frequently in business that we don't address because we have to be rational and it's cognitive and it's by the numbers. And there's a whole host of feeling stuff going on underneath the covers, literally. So egos and disappointments and power plays, all that. So does that make sense?
Yes, and it seems like just in the workplace, it's like check your emotions at the door. Check your love life at the door, check those things that are unacceptable at the door or that we don't know what to do with. And it seems like that no brain that we have, emotions and feelings, I get tripped up on that sometimes about, what are you thinking or what are you feeling about that?
Yeah.
To come back to you later about it. Not very responsive. So
and the truth is, Tim, there's so much in the business world that leaders actually go with their gut, sometimes in counter to what the data says. They go with their gut feeling because, the coaching training tells you, it gets in your bones and you have a sixth sense about it,
Yeah. Right.
CTI,
yeah, those guys, yeah. So anybody else have questions for Dave?
Alan?
Let me unmute. First of all, Dave, I love you.
I love you too, Alan. I love the length of time that we've known each other and the evolution I've seen.
Yeah, baby. Okay, someone give me cry. Okay. Actually, I have a question that I ponder about a lot, and I want your opinion on it. You're identifying what someone desires and what they want. Is it useful or not to identify what they don't want and what they don't desire? I'm curious what you think.
I think it kind of relied back to neuroscience on this, and part of our brain isn't really good at parsing out no. And so, I think one of the most, elegant examples of that is, a guy named Jamie Smart from the UK who does a lot of coaching training and what have you. And he was talking about his daughter. She lost her shoe, I think it was. And she was walking around the house going, I've lost my shoe. I've lost my shoe. Where's my shoe? I've lost my shoe. I've lost my shoe. And he said, okay, so stop. You're 7 years old, but what if you start saying, I remember where I left my shoe. I remember where I left my shoe instead of that. So her brain was confirming the fact that, I lost my shoe. So you want to lose your shoe? I won't help you find your shoe. But if you want to remember where you left your shoe, and all of a sudden she goes, hey, Daddy, I found my shoe. And the same thing happens with not, I don't want to be in another abusive relationship. Well, there's a whole world of not an abusive relationship. What is it you really want? Well, I'd like to be in a relationship with a man who is supportive, who honors my boundaries, who is willing to talk through things, who is going to love me instead of I don't want to be in an abusive relationship.
Cool. Thanks. That makes sense.
Gary has a question, I think.
Well, not a question as much as, where the fuck have you been? Thank you for coming back.
I needed to go into the wilderness for a while, Gary.
Yes. We need to all do that, I'm sure, once in a while. No,
Void is useful.
Really
it's good to be back.
A joy to see you. I am glad that you're back, and in a way that works for you. You obviously said the positive things to yourself, as you're telling us all about. I just want to share one example. It was kind of similar to that. I said about well over 15 years ago, I stopped saying I'm not good at remembering names to I'm good at remembering names. And I don't remember I went that far, but whatever it is, I took the negative out of it. From then on, Phil, I could remember your name, you know?
Right. Exactly.
No, but I'd make games of it. I figure out, well, so what's a strategy for me to remember versus to always put that thing in front of me. It says, I don't remember. Right.
Yeah.
So, and you gave so many examples today of like stories from my own life. And then I think this story that you told about Harry getting to the gates and all the laughing, your impact on me will be that I will never be one of those people. I would not be witness to anyone laughing.
Hold on.
I would never be witness to anyone laughing at you. The footprint that you've left is huge. To me, it's a legacy. Every time I go somewhere that I expect you to be, there's just a big space. And that's really why I'm really thrilled to see you today, and just to bask in your wisdom again for a little while, because he's the wise man, and he serves wine too.
I look forward to getting back to that world, sharing that
That
with
would
people.
be great. Yeah, wouldn't we all?
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I apologize, and I have to run. I have to get ready for one of my coaching clients shortly.
No, but thank you for your generosity, Gary. It's great. It's great to be back here and to see, connect with people like you.
Yeah.
And everybody who's new here as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go well.
See you, man. Sorry, gotta run.
See you, Gary. So, Dave, is there any kind of a takeaway or call to action or anything? What?
Well, I think, a couple of things. One is to take a look at the coaching tools that you have. Because one of the things that I've been using with No Brain is I took the wheel of life. And so it isn't every area of our life that we have difficulty asking for what we want. So with a client, so tell me what you want in family. Tell me what you want in finances. And you can start seeing where there's hesitation, and there will be areas where it actually freezes. And then you have an opportunity to really start looking at, how can we navigate to get you what it is you really want? Because, one of the things that, men come to me most frequently is about, I don't know what I want, and I want help with that. So that's one thing. So look at the tools that you already have, and how can I use them in a different way? The second thing is 2 invitations, and I'll figure out how to get these to you. The first one, a week from today, I'm hosting a conversation about wisdom learned during the last 20 months. What have we learned about identity? What have we learned about the way that we come to the world? And it's really about how do we re-engage with our desire? Because I think so much of what's happened is, the freeway of love got shut down, the pink Cadillac got put in the garage with the tarp over the top of it, and it's time to take her out. And we've got to get the engine tuned up and probably put some fresh gas in, but it's time to get that pink Cadillac out there and start cruising again. So how do we re-engage in a useful way? And I'm writing a piece right now for my Facebook deal with the ones I've been writing about, I don't want to go back. I don't want normal. I don't want either of those things. You know? Normal wasn't what I wanted to begin with. And, you know, I don't want to go back. You know, there's been 20 months and lots has happened. And, you know, let's not start where we left off. Let's launch from where we are. Because hopefully some things have fallen away and there's some space and all of those things. So in order to get connected with that, if you type in the URL coachformen.com/engage, you can register for that conversation. It's a week from yesterday, 4 p.m. Eastern, or excuse me, 4 p.m. Pacific. And the second one is starting the last week of November, the last Monday night. I'm doing a 6-segment series on activating desire. And it's going to involve a lot of these concepts I've been talking about, as well as a lot of the other work about bringing desire into your life as the engine to propel you forward, and for you to bring a powerful way. And that's Coach for Men /activate. So one's engage, one's activate.
Awesome.
And, you know, I'll check with Alan on how to get these out. You know, also maybe check with, send them to Arnie and he can put them in a newsletter if you'd be so generous. So.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that, yes.
Awesome. And the Facebook page, is there a Facebook that, you know, if somebody wanted to follow you, they could? Or... Yeah,
it's just, you know, it's just my name. And what I decided 5-6 weeks ago is, you know, just to do an experiment. As much as anything, it's an experiment in visibility. And so it's, fancy. You know, I just put something out there, you know, a piece of writing. And since you're coaches and, you know, working on your own visibility, one of the things that I came to that's made it a lot easier is I realized after the second post that I actually had a template that worked for this.
Yeah.
So now I can look at it, and if you look at the post, there's some similarity there. They usually start with a story. There's an idea that I want to explore. There's an expansion of that idea, and then there's some reference back to my work.
Well, it sounds like you're eating your own cooking here and putting out desires and seeing, being seen. So Mark is being relentlessly sweet and prompting us. It's time to wrap this up. It's awesome. I so enjoy seeing you, and thank you.
Likewise, thank you.
Don't wait another 2 years to come back.
I won't.